sun was setting, casting golden hues across the sky. But for the young man standing in the middle of nowhere, time seemed to have stopped. He wasn't sure how he got here or why his classmates were missing. The last thing he remembered was a school trip, a normal day, or so it seemed. But now, the air was thick with unease, and he felt the oppressive weight of being watched. Just as he was about to call out, a chill ran down his spine. A voice, ancient and otherworldly, spoke, its words resonating deep within him. "You have been chosen." Chosen for what? Before he could ask, his vision blurred, and the world around him dissolved into darkness. When he awoke, he found himself in a vast wilderness, his school uniform starkly out of place against the untamed backdrop. The others were here too, scattered and equally bewildered. An old man dressed in ornate robes appeared, his eyes gleaming with an unsettling mix of wisdom and malice. "Welcome, mortals," the man began. "You have been summoned to this realm to participate in a trial of survival. Only the strongest will thrive." As the words sank in, panic erupted among the students. Some pleaded, others protested, but the man simply smiled. He raised his hand, and suddenly the earth beneath them shifted, separating them into groups. The young man, now isolated, felt an inexplicable calm washing over him, as though some dormant force within him was stirring. The first encounter came swiftly. A beast, grotesque and towering, lunged at him from the shadows. Fear gripped him, but as the creature closed in, something strange happened. Without thinking, he muttered, "Die!" The word wasn't shouted, but it carried an undeniable weight, and the creature's massive body collapsed lifelessly to the ground. His breath hitched. What had he done? The realization dawned slowly, but it was undeniable. With a single thought, he could bring death, instant and absolute. But this wasn't just a gift. It felt more like a curse. The power was intoxicating, yet isolating. Who could he trust with such a secret? Could he even trust himself? The others weren't faring so well. He came across a group of his classmates battling another monstrous entity. Their screams echoed in the distance. He could help them. He should help them. But the fear of being exposed held him back. Instead, he observed, his mind racing with questions. How had they been brought here? And why? More importantly, what was the old man's goal in all of this? As the days stretched on, he found himself torn between his desire to survive and the growing weight of guilt. He had seen what his power could do, how easily it could end lives. But what if that power was the key to saving others? Each decision felt heavier than the last, as though the realm itself was testing not just his strength, but his morality. A few days passed and the group's numbers dwindled. Each encounter with the realm's horrors left them weaker, more desperate. Yet he remained unscathed, his power a shield against the dangers. But the more he used it, the more questions it raised. Was he truly invincible? Or would there come a day when even this power couldn't save him? One night, as they huddled around a fire, a girl, one of the few who had survived this long, approached him. She had noticed something, she said. How he always seemed to escape unharmed. How the beasts never attacked him. Her eyes bore into his, demanding answers he wasn't ready to give. He deflected her questions, but the encounter left him uneasy. If she suspected something, how long before the others did too? And when they found out, what would they do? The old man reappeared, this time with a cryptic smile. "You are progressing well," he remarked. "But remember, every gift has its price." The words lingered in his mind, a sinister promise of things to come. What price would he have to pay? And what would he lose in the process? The trials became increasingly cruel, forcing the survivors to face their worst fears. For him, the tests were different. They weren't about physical strength or courage. They were about control. Each challenge pushed him closer to the edge, tempting him to use his power recklessly. He began to wonder if the realm was not just a battlefield, but a mirror reflecting the darkness within him. The group faced their biggest challenge yet, a labyrinth filled with traps and illusions. It was said that reaching the center would grant unimaginable power. but the cost of failure was death. Together, they ventured in, the air thick with tension. The labyrinth tested not just their strength, but their trust in one another. Paranoia seeped in as the illusions played on their deepest fears and insecurities. For him, the visions were different. They weren't of fear, but of destruction. He saw himself standing amidst a field of corpses, his power the cause of it all. Was this a warning or a prophecy? At the labyrinth's heart, they found a relic pulsating with energy. The old man appeared once more, his voice dripping with amusement. "You've done well, but now the real trial begins." Before they could react, the relic shattered, releasing a blinding light that engulfed them all. When the light faded, he found himself alone once again. The wilderness was gone, replaced by a void that stretched endlessly in every direction. The voice returned, louder and more commanding this time. "You have proven your worth, but are you ready to bear the weight of your power?" The question hung in the air, unanswered, as the void began to shift, taking the shape of yet another challenge. This time, he knew, it wasn't just survival on the line. It was something much greater. But what? What would you do if you had the power to kill with a single thought? Could you handle the responsibility? Or would it consume you? These questions gnawed at him as he prepared for the next trial. The journey was far from over, and the mysteries of this realm were only beginning to unravel. The next phase of the trial began unexpectedly. A new figure emerged from the void. A young woman, her expression unreadable, her presence both familiar and foreign. She introduced herself as a guide, but her words carried an edge that suggested she was far more than that. "Your power," she said, "is not a blessing. It is a burden, and it will demand sacrifices you are not ready for." Her cryptic warning left him unsettled. She led him through a series of visions, each more harrowing than the last. He saw his classmates, their lives intertwined with his choices. He saw a city destroyed, the sky darkened by his own actions. The visions blurred the line between reality and illusion, leaving him questioning what was real and what was manipulation. As days turned into weeks, the challenges grew more personal. The realm seemed to know his fears, his regrets, and his desires. One night, he encountered a figure from his past, a childhood friend who had died years ago. The reunion was bittersweet, filled with joy and sorrow. But the illusion was short-lived, as the realm reminded him that nothing here was real. This encounter, however, sparked a new resolve within him. He realized that his power, though terrifying, could be a force for good. But to wield it responsibly, he needed to understand its origins. Who had given him this ability, and why? The guide, though reluctant, hinted at answers lying within the core of the labyrinth, a place no one had ever reached before. The journey to the labyrinth's core was fraught with danger. The group's numbers dwindled further, each loss weighing heavily on him. The guide's warnings echoed in his mind. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. As he approached the core, he felt the weight of his choices pressing down on him. The labyrinth seemed to test not just his strength, but his humanity. At the heart of it all was a choice: to embrace his power fully, risking the loss of his humanity, or to reject it, accepting his limitations as a mortal. The final trial forced him to confront his deepest fears. A mirror appeared before him, reflecting not his physical form, but his soul. What he saw shook him to his core. The reflection showed a version of himself consumed by power, a tyrant feared and hated by all. Yet, within the darkness, there was a flicker of light, a reminder of who he once was. The guide's voice broke through his thoughts. "The choice is yours, but remember, every action has consequences." Exercise. As he stood at the crossroads, the realm began to crumble around him. Time was running out, and the weight of his decision would shape not only his fate, but the fate of everyone connected to him. The story was far from over, and the answers he sought were only the beginning of a much larger journey. Suddenly, a fragment of memory surfaced, a fleeting moment from the school trip. There had been a strange glow, a fleeting sensation of being pulled away. Could that have been the moment it all began? This realization opened a new question. Was this trial truly a random act, or had someone orchestrated it all? If so, Why him? The thoughts spiraled as the core of the labyrinth began to glow. Voices echoed in the air, each one recounting fragments of his journey, reminding him of the lives lost, the battles fought, and the power he had wielded. He clenched his fists, feeling the weight of responsibility grow heavier. Just as the glow intensified, the guide spoke again. Your story isn't written yet. Will you rise above the chaos, or will you let it consume you? The choice is not just yours. It belongs to everyone you've touched. With this, the final chapter of the trial began, leaving him standing before the core, his heart pounding with anticipation and dread. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold as he stood at the edge of the forest. His breath came in shallow gasps, his heart pounding in his chest. The eerie silence around him was almost suffocating, broken only by the distant rustle of leaves. Each step he took seemed to echo, as though the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. He had come far, farther than anyone could have imagined, but the journey wasn't over. It was clear now that survival wasn't the ultimate goal. There was something deeper at play, a mystery lurking in the shadows, taunting him with its elusiveness. The power he wielded, the ability to end life with a mere thought, was both a blessing and a curse. And as he ventured deeper into the unknown, he couldn't shake the feeling that the answers he sought would come at a price he wasn't ready to pay. The forest gave way to an open plain, where ruins of an ancient civilization lay scattered like forgotten relics of a bygone era. Pillars, cracked and worn by time, stood like sentinels guarding secrets long buried. It was here that he encountered her again, the guide who had appeared before, her presence as enigmatic as ever. "You've made it this far," she said, her voice soft but laced with an edge of urgency. "But the trials ahead will test more than your strength. They will test your resolve, your humanity." He didn't respond immediately. Her words lingered in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. What did she mean by humanity? Had he already lost a part of himself, blinded by the power he carried? The questions gnawed at him, but there was no time for reflection. The ruins were alive with an energy that crackled in the air, drawing him forward. The first trial was one of endurance. As he stepped into the ruins, the ground beneath him shifted, and the air grew thick with heat. Flames erupted around him, forming a labyrinth of fire. The heat was oppressive, each step a battle against the searing pain that threatened to consume him. But it wasn't the fire that tested him. It was the visions. Each flicker of flame brought forth memories, vivid and haunting. He saw his classmates, their faces twisted in fear and despair. He saw the beast he had slain with a single word, its lifeless eyes staring back at him. And he saw himself, standing alone amidst the chaos, his power the source of both salvation and destruction. The visions blurred the line between reality and illusion, but he pressed on, determined to reach the center of the labyrinth. When he finally emerged, his body was battered, his mind weary. But the flames had left something behind, a realization. The power he wielded wasn't just a tool, it was a mirror, reflecting his innermost fears and desires, and if he wasn't careful, it would consume him. The next trial took him to the depths of an underground cavern, where darkness reigned supreme. The guide's voice echoed in the void, her words cryptic yet compelling. "In the darkness, you must find the light. But beware, not all light leads to salvation." As he navigated the cavern, he was confronted by illusions that preyed on his vulnerabilities. A soft voice called his name, filled with warmth and familiarity. It was her voice, the girl who had approached him around the campfire, her eyes filled with suspicion, yet tinged with hope. But as he reached out, the illusion shattered, leaving behind only the cold emptiness of the cavern. He realized then that the light he sought wasn't external, it was within him, buried beneath layers of doubt and fear. And as he embraced this truth, the darkness receded, revealing a path that led to the surface. The guide met him at the cavern's exit, her expression unreadable. "You're beginning to understand," she said, "but understanding is only the first step. The real challenge lies ahead." Before he could respond, the ground trembled, and a massive structure emerged from the earth. It was a fortress, its walls towering and impenetrable, its gates adorned with intricate carvings that seemed to pulsate with life. The fortress was his final trial, and the stakes had never been higher. Inside the fortress, he faced a series of challenges that tested not just his strength, but his character. One room presented him with a choice: to save a group of his classmates trapped in a deadly trap, or to retrieve a relic that could hold the key to escaping this realm. The screams of his classmates echoed in his ears, their pleas for help cutting through him like a knife. But he knew that saving them would jeopardize the mission. Torn between his sense of duty and his humanity, he made his choice, the weight of it bearing down on him like never before. The relic, when he finally reached it, was a simple stone, unremarkable in appearance, but radiating an energy that was both familiar and foreign. As he held it, the voice returned, louder and more commanding. "You have done well, but power without purpose is meaningless. What will you do with this gift?" The question lingered in his mind as he left the fortress, the relic in hand. The guide was waiting for him, her expression softer now, almost sympathetic. "The journey isn't over," she said, "but you've taken the first step toward understanding your purpose." He wanted to ask her what that purpose was, but before he could, the ground beneath them shifted, and the world around them dissolved into a blinding light. When he opened his eyes, he was back in the wilderness, the fortress and the trials now nothing more than a memory. As he walked through the forest, the questions began to pile up. Who had created this realm? And why? What was the purpose of these trials? And, most importantly, what was the price of his power? The answers were elusive, but one thing was clear: he couldn't face this alone. His conscience spoke, and he turned his attention to the task of finding Dominic. The miracle trees gave him ideas about the future. The girl from before appeared once again, her eyes filled with determination. "I know your secret," she said, "and I'm not afraid of it. If we're going to survive this, we need to work together." Her voice was low, trembling, and held the intensity of her eyes above the rest of her. Her words were a balm to his weary soul. For the first time he felt a glimmer of hope, not just for survival, but for something greater. The journey ahead would be perilous, but with her by his side, he felt ready to face whatever came next. Highest. The final trial loomed on the horizon, its presence a constant reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. The guide's words echoed in his mind. Power without purpose is meaningless. He didn't fully understand what that purpose was, but he knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about uncovering the truth, about finding a way to wield his power responsibly, and about protecting those who mattered most. The realm seemed to shift around him, unveiling new mysteries. Shadows moved at the edges of his vision, whispering secrets he couldn't quite grasp. Each step forward felt heavier, as though the very ground resisted his progress. Yet he pressed on, driven by the burning need to uncover the truth. As he reached a towering cliff, a new figure emerged, a guardian unlike any he had faced before. Clad in armor that shimmered like liquid night, the guardian's voice was a low rumble that seemed to shake the earth. "You seek the truth, but are you prepared to face it?" Their battle was unlike any other. Each strike from the guardian tested not just his strength, but his will to continue. The fight dragged on, pushing him to the very edge of his endurance. And yet, with every blow he dodged, every counter he launched, he grew more certain. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight for understanding. The wealth of the mountains opened his mind to appear with new ideas, afforded him new perspectives as his suffering diminished. When he finally brought the guardian to its knees, it spoke once more. "The truth lies within. Seek it, and you shall find your purpose." The journey continued, leading him to a crystalline lake that seemed to reflect not just his image, but his soul. As he gazed into its depths, he saw fragments of his past, moments of joy and sorrow, triumph and regret. The lake seemed to call to him, urging him to step forward. He plunged into the water, the icy cold wrapping around him like a shroud. As he sank deeper, visions consumed him, visions of a world in chaos, of power unchecked and lives shattered. But amidst the chaos, he saw something else, a path forward, a way to wield his power not for destruction, but for hope. When he emerged from the lake, he felt a newfound clarity. The trials had tested him in ways he never imagined, but they had also given him the tools he needed to move forward. As the guide appeared once more, her expression was one of quiet pride. "You're ready," she said. "The final chapter awaits." The sun rose higher, its light breaking through the clouds. With every step he took, the world around him seemed to grow brighter, as though reflecting the resolve within him. The story was far from over, but for the first time, he felt truly prepared to face whatever lay ahead.